We're live, are we?
We are
Hello,
live.
everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for the virtual launch of Can a Leopard Change Its Spots by my old pal, Alex Smallboots Majombana van den Heever. Sorry, changing a leopard's spots. I'm James Hendry, and I've known Alex for about 20 years now, firstly as underling, then as friend, then as business partner and fellow porridge mogul, housemate, and most recently, he officiated at my wedding. Also joining us is Renias Mhlongo, who was not going to manage, but he's now found himself a place at a school in Dixie Village, just outside the Sabi Sands, and he too will be joining us, which is just marvelous. Just a reminder that we won't be able to hear you, so if you start shouting at your screen, I'm afraid we won't be able to hear you, but you can send any questions you have to the chat function on the Zoom webinar. Format's going to be that we'll start the conversation, chat for about 20 minutes, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. So you can send your questions into the chat, and I'll select the ones that I feel are most appropriate. Sadly, you won't be able to get a physical copy until after lockdown, but Exclusive Books have set up a special offer for Fanatics members. And if you order your paperback copy of Changing a Leopard's Spots online now, you'll get 10% off at a checkout until the end of the national lockdown. You can also get the ebook on Amazon Kindle or Kobo. And Pan will post the links in the chat, and you can also get an email with all the details after the launch. All right. Now, I have a note there to say why Renias is not here, but Renias is here. So I'm just going to ask Alex and Renias to say hello.
Hello. Thank you.
Yeah, hello.
Okay. So a quick introduction to the book, Changing a Leopard's Spots. This is a remarkable story of two brilliant South Africans, Renias Mhlongo and Alex van den Heever. It's a story of a bond that these men have forged over 2 decades of tracking wild animals all over the world. The anecdotes are full of suspense, humor, beauty, pathos, and deep thought. Mostly, however, this is an important book because it offers profound insight into the way that people from different cultures and backgrounds can forge a powerful bond for the good of not only themselves, but also our troubled country. So I'm going to kick off with a question to Alex, and it's, I suppose, the most obvious question. Why did you write this book?
Yes, thank you, James. Thank you to everyone who's joined. It's been 25 years of adventure, of camaraderie, of profound discovering of myself through a relationship with somebody who is very different to me. And I just felt that that was worthy of sharing. I wrote the stories all the way through since 1995 when we first met each other. I've written stories about my time with Renias in the bush, tracking exploits, and obviously animals we've viewed and so on. And recently somebody came to me and said, well, why don't you publish a book? And I had all this material, so it didn't take me very long to put it all together. But I guess in a nutshell, I just felt strongly that the story needed to be shared. And I believe that if South Africans can get together, that there's so much potential available to us. And I hope we will get into some of the stories, but it's like with a lot of things that have happened in my life, it kind of just took on a life of its own.
Okay, great. Ren, I'm going to ask you a question now. And your first question is, what do you think that other South Africans can learn and understand from your relationship with Alex?
Hello, everyone. I think people, actually, for that book, the people, I'm sure they're going to learn a lot, which means that they're two different culture, which means they form such a big relationship, and they we work together, and we track it together, we play together. And to my side, actually, I think maybe everyone will be copy that. So which meaning it'll be good for South African people. Which meaning if they they learn actually what are we doing. So it's in my heart belief actually. I think when people copy that, they go build our country will become better. Which meaning two different cultures, people, which mean they form such a very good relationship. To me, it's very important that book, which means everyone will read that book, which means I'm sure they'll change something for the people in South Africa. I think this is my belief.
Thanks, Ren. Alex, on to you now. Obviously, you've been a 25-year relationship with Renias, and in the book, you describe Renias's exceptional talents, but also the work that he's put into being a tracker. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about when you realized that Renias was different? You'd worked with many trackers, but there was a moment perhaps in Patagonia where you realized that Renias was in some way different and in some way exceptional compared with any other tracker you'd worked with.
Yes, right early on, I noticed that he was different from the other trackers that I used to. There was a moment where he correctly interpreted the behavior of a leopard from hearing the way a tree squirrel was making its alarm call. That was the first time I realized that he was doing things that others couldn't. There was another occasion where we'd be tracking lions and we'd stop for a coffee break, and he heard some birds alarming about 60 meters away and said to us, would you all like to come and see a python? And everyone said, yes, of course, we'd love to see a python. How do you know it's a python? Anyway, he walked with his coffee mug in one hand and his rusk in the other, and he casually walked off 60 meters into the bush and scouted around and found a python. And he'd again interpreted the bird's alarm call, their position low on the bush, not only to determine it was a snake, but in fact, what type of snake it was. So those kinds of things, he continuously would surprise me and surprise everyone else, quite frankly, who worked at Londolozi, with the things he could create. Things kind of just happened around Ren in the bush, always, consistently. I recently spoke to a friend of mine and a mentor, Dr. Ian McCullum, and he said to me, sports players usually have a day when there's a game when they become great. And for me, for Renias, that happened in October last year when we were in Patagonia, tracking a single young male puma over what can only be described as rocky, very, very rocky, inhospitable terrain. And for 3 hours in an area where they didn't really see the pumas, they hadn't seen them often at all. And after a few hours with literally, I think we had 4 or 5 pieces of evidence, 3 tracks, some hair from a sheep that it had killed, and a scrape mark from marking its territory. Was he able to piece together what this animal had done and successfully find it? And to me, that was the day Renias, in my eyes, became a great tracker, if I'm qualified to determine that. But and I just haven't seen that with other trackers. The creativity, I haven't seen that with other trackers. And we've been, as you say, around the world, and we've worked with some remarkable trackers. He seems to just have that extra 10%.
Cool. Ren, can we move on a little bit now to your life? And I wonder if you could describe a little bit about where you grew up. Maybe tell us a story from your life as a child.
So I born in a place called Victim out from there, then come to the Dixie. So I growing up in Dixie, and so my job actually, you know, I have to look after cattle, and all along. So the story started along. If you actually lose 1 cow, actually my father at the district did not allow you to come back home. So until actually bring that cow back. So for that was for me is a big story for that. So before that, I think my father, I know he doesn't like me. But meanwhile, now I can see why do that to me actually put me to the high level now where I'm at today. So he treating us it's like that. While we're growing, so we learn more things and we know how to survive in the bush, actually without no millimeter or rice or something. So yeah, so I grew up that way. So to learn how to track the cattle. So that cattle, they give me a patient. Actually, how can we deal with the one thing actually until you're right.
So you learned your tracking skills. You started off learning them by tracking cattle and goats.
Yes. You see, for about 60 cattle, you know, you have to distinguish which one. So which cattle actually be lost it, And you have to tell by the tracks. You know, now 60 cattle is a many tracks around. So you have to pick which one exactly you lost it. So it's not because color, but you have to know from the 60 cattle, which way each cattle you follow. So you have to be single one out from 100 tracks. Single one out, you then find out, okay, this is my cattle actually went east or went south. So you have to track in that maybe the 2-3 days that we found it, then bring it back home. So I learned my tracking from that time. So the time I go, the time I got a job in Londolozi, you know, I have that skills, but actually it's still not like much to me, especially with that leopard, tracking leopard. Tracking leopard and cows is different. You know, leopard is a very tiny small tracks, which you can't able to see. So they take me to be a while to see that. But anyway, so the time going, so I'm doing better and better and better until today.
Can you remember the first leopard that you tracked?
I remember that leopard exactly. And I remember that because what happened, I was driving with a guy, the guy what I call Philip Knight. It was my first ranger. And I remember that, and Dave Varty, Radio Philip, said, Philip, if you find leopard tracks, drop runners off. I want to just find that leopard. So I remember that after that afternoon, it was around 4 o'clock. And Philip dropped me. And I tracked that leopard around 4 o'clock, and it took me. I promise you, I have no clue where that animal go. So I looked tracks, I couldn't see nothing on the ground. So I remember that I started crying. I said, why don't see tracks? But something said, you know what? You have to work, push it on. Something will come automatically. I tracked that leopard for about an hour and a half. So then I found that leopard they killed the tiger. They put that kill up. They put that kill up into the marrow tree. So then I celebrate. It was my first leopard I found, what they call the mother leopard. So my first leopard I found, the mother leopard. So I'm so proud about that, finding that leopard myself. So then I celebrated. So okay, now I send how leopard movement like.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Ren. Great story that, and of course a very famous leopard. Alex, next one for you. In the book, you talk disparagingly about Fanagalo, which of course is this language that is often spoken between white and black people in South Africa. Why do you talk disparagingly about it, and what role do you think language plays in South Africa?
Yeah, so I mean, Fanagalo was developed on the mines during the apartheid era of this country. It represents no human identity at all, and it's a mismatch of various languages, including Zulu, Afrikaans, English, Xhosa, Sotho. And so when I arrived at Londolozi, I didn't want to speak that language. I wanted to speak Shangaan properly. And fortunately, Renias felt the same about that. I think language gives you an eye into a world that you will not see unless you can speak that language to people of a different language group to you. As I have got better at speaking Shangaan, I've understood Renias better, emotionally, spiritually. There are nuances that get understood only once you have a firm grasp on the language. And I find it just as astonishing that in this country, if you go to France, you go and live in France, and within days and weeks, it's expected you're going to learn to speak French. You come to South Africa as a English-speaking South African, there seems to be just no pressure for you to speak any local language. I find that interesting, and I find that superficial. We can only understand people of another culture and language group when we understand their language, their narrative. And so for me, I would say that would be probably the greatest key in our unlocking of a relationship between Renias and I. Renias couldn't speak much English when the two of us got together, so we taught each other's languages. And it wasn't perfect, and it took a long time, but it's contributed to a solid foundation.
If anyone watching is wondering what we're talking about, Alex speaks very good Shangaan, and it's always amazing to watch people's faces drop in absolute amazement when he opens his mouth around Shangaan people. It's wonderful to see. Alex, one more for you. Tracking is obviously a massive part of both of your lives. It's an ancient skill, but so was using stone tools. And obviously stone tools went out of fashion about 20,000 years ago. Do you think the tracking will survive, or do you think the technology is going to eventually make it obsolete?
Well, tracking, broadly speaking, can be split into two components. The one is the study of animals' tracks and signs, the difference between a lion's track and a leopard's track and a dove's component of tracking. Technology is already well on its way into being able to interpret animal tracks. But on the follow, the other component is the trailing of animals. I don't see any machine being able to do. But tracking will survive because it's a very authentic means with which a human being can connect with nature, and it's a skill that requires both mental
I think we may have lost you there. Are you still there, Alex?
I'm back now.
All right. All right. So tracking has required mental and something we got there.
Tracking requires both a mental and a physical component,
Right.
and it's very similar to people who play golf, and they get absolutely sucked into the game of golf. For us, that's tracking, and the only reason more people don't do it is that people have access to what big wildlife areas to go and practice the craft of tracking. And that's what my agenda is, and Renias's agenda, and in fact, the Tracker Academy's agenda, is to show that tracking has relevant use and as an ancient skill in these modern times, as a pastime to enjoy, to connect, as I said, to connect with nature. There's no way else you can get so intimate with an animal than when you follow its trail footstep by footstep for a period of 6 or 8 hours, and you eventually find that animal. You get to know exactly what it has done. You are able to glean so much more than even a researcher does when he puts a collar on a lion, for example. So the level of intimacy and the level of detail that you can get from trailing a lion is far more than virtually anything else. And then from a conservation management side, tracking is relevant because we need trackers to be able to find animals for discerning travelers, tourists coming to this country and to Africa. We need trackers to be able to track and find wounded animals in wildlife protection efforts, anti-poaching, tracking of poachers, and of course, animal monitoring is another one. And then one of the others is, and this has become an unintended consequence of Tracker Academy work over the last 10 years, is the animal or predator habituation projects that we started, using trackers to form relationships with wild and elusive predators for the benefit of tourism operations, which we've now done in various parts of the world outside of Africa, where we've applied ancient African tracking methodology to places outside of the continent. And it's just, as Gaynor Rupert says, it's an example of South Africa exporting its skill for the benefit of international conservation. So I'm convinced tracking has a wide application and will grow in popularity, not shrink.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there for you and ask Ren one more question. Ren, why is tracking important to you? You've done it all your life. I mean, many of us grew up doing things like, I don't know, learning to play a guitar or learning to play a piano or playing rugby, but then we go on and we do other jobs. We don't do that as a job. Why is tracking important to you?
Yeah, James, actually, there's two things for why actually tracking is important to me. Firstly, so we're tracking animal for to eat. To eat at home is a food. And secondly, we're training for the animal actually to actually get the money to survive. There's two things. So actually the way they're tracking started from the people that tracking that animal for just hunting to kill to eat the small thing like impala or tokodaika. So then that thing they pass it on. So now that tracking skill they pass into the reserve, which means the people actually have to track the animal to find them, which means they show the guest actually the animal actually the guest pay the money, which means they receive the money from the guest to actually to support our family. That's what that thing's starting.
Okay.
So that's what to me, tracking is very important for everyone, especially for the people actually living here, right here in Northfield area, in Thunder Bush or Cybersand or Kuka Park. Yeah. So the tracking is they make people survive.
Okay. Before we get into a few questions from everybody, I know we are running shortish on time. I just wanted to quickly say, Alex and Renias started the Tracker Academy through the South African College of Tourism with the help of the Rupert Foundation, I think is correct. And I just quickly want to let Alex say a few things about the Tracker Academy and where it's going from here. Where to for the Tracker Academy?
Yeah, so the Tracker Academy was founded by Gaynor Rupert back in 2010. And over that, and Renias and I and Carol Bernardi and Janetta Bock were the founding staff members there. And it's an NGO that forms part of the SA College for Tourism. And we, as I say, started 10 years ago. And we bring rural unemployed young men and women onto sponsored one-year full-time programs to train as professional wildlife trackers. And we've got 3 bases, one at Samara in the Karoo, one at Londolozi in the Sabi Sands, and one at Swalu in the Kalahari. And we take 8 students per training base. As I say, it's a one-year program, so we do 24 a year. And in the 10 years we've been in operation, we've trained about 170 professional wildlife trackers, of which some 155 or so today, as I speak, are now in permanent conservation jobs. And we teach them not only to track the practical traditional skills of tracking, but also in how to apply that skill in modern conservation management practices, for example, in monitoring, or in anti-poaching, or in tourism. And so that's gone on for we're close on 11 years. And it's a project that is very close to all our hearts. And we hope it will grow. And my vision for that is for it to grow to other parts of the world. We're a voice for indigenous knowledge, for traditional skills of tracking. And we want to show that these ancient skills have relevance, and that people, whether or not you work in conservation, can benefit massively from engaging in the process of tracking. So that's the work of Tracker Academy.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to a couple of questions now. And this one from a chap called James Hobson. James Hobson would like to know, Ren, other than Londolozi, where has your favorite tracking experience been? Which country?
I can say that it's in America that we're tracking a wolf and a black bear. So, which meaning that was a big challenge to me. So, you know, they've been to the country. I say, so first day, I don't know that area. And the first day, I don't know that how the footprints of that, for that animal tracking. I promise it's not easy. It can be very difficult, very difficult the first stage. You know, we found that track, that black bear tracks is like a fainting. We don't see nothing on the ground. So I remember I remember the second day we went there to track that big bear. Myself, Alex, we struggling, we start failing. I said to me, buddy, what do you think? Do you think we're going to track this one? I said, hey, buddy, I don't know. Let's see. But I said, okay, let's try. So we tried. We worked out actually how that big bear movement like. So we found that we tracked that bear. We found it. So you know, to me, that was a big challenge. That big bear and the wolf is a big challenge to me. It's my best animal except tracking from other countries.
Great.
We went. That was an amazing adventure. That we were paid to go and teach people how to American trackers how to track their own animals. And of course, we got there late because of the weather, and we didn't have time to acclimatize. And we took these people into the Yellowstone National Park with no knowledge of how bears move, and the terrain and how the landscape influences the animal's movement. And that first day was the longest day of my life. We must have looked like a pair of hyenas searching for a 3-month-old carcass. We were wholly unsuccessful. And later that night in our tent, it was freezing cold, and we were literally in one sleeping bag together trying to stay warm. And Renias said, I know how we can find these bears in the morning. I saw one of the hares on a tree, and I also noticed that there were 2 types of bushes that the bears were feeding on berries. We later learned those were juniper and manzanita berry bushes. And then he said the bears, they get onto the log of they step onto a fallen over tree or a log. Instead of just stepping over it, they walk along it perpendicular. Whereas we used to, a leopard or a lion just walking over a log. These animals were turning to the left, and they were obviously looking along underneath of the log, looking for beetle grubs and so on. And he worked out those 3 things in the first day. We decided on a strategy for the second day, that he would look for the evidence, and I would try and interpret where the animal moved from the influence of the landscape. The second day was a bit better, and the third day we got better and better. But Renias saved that trip for us, and that was testament to his ability to adapt. And to me, there are very few people in the world that can do that.
Great. This one comes from Tony Parks, I'm assuming in Australia. Alex and Renias, what do you think is the #1 attribute or quality someone needs to become a great tracker, other than experience or practice?
I think that some people are born with an aptitude for tracking, but in no way different to anyone born with an aptitude to playing cricket or tennis or any other vocation. You need good eyes, an able body, and then just lots and lots of hours of practice, lots of practice. I don't think there's any one thing. If you examine the top trackers in the world, you'd probably find that they have above average IQ, I guess. I don't know that. I would assume that. And I think people that have trackers that have a natural empathy about them for the other, are able to get into the skin of an animal, are able to understand what the animal is doing and feeling and its motive and where it's moving. People that are highly detail-oriented often don't think that way. And so you need a blend of creative ability as well as technical expertise. And a creative flow comes from a foundation of deep technical competence. So the step 1 is to achieve that technical competence, understanding what every single animal's track in the landscape looks like, why it is what it is, and then to begin to start to practice following it. It's just like playing cricket. And we a few years ago, we saw A.B. de Villiers make the fastest 150 at Ellis Park, at the Wanderers. And that was that day, I think he came up with this new cricket shot where he hit 6s behind him and all that. And he doesn't know how he did that. And he did that at a ball flying at 140 kilometers an hour. The decision making was just like that. And that is, he's in the flow. He's achieved his 10,000 hours. He's technically deeply competent, and he's spent a lot of time immersing himself in his craft. And that's what people like Renias and others have done.
Cool. Thank you for that. Another one from Kritika Patha, who would like to know what your most remarkable sighting together was. Can the two of you easily name one? What is your best sighting together?
Let me say, the Chile. The Chile is the best sighting to myself, Alex, because the first time, I'd never been into the snow area, and Alex is just, we just made a trip to the Chile. So to me, that's the best. we stay there, we put a jacket the whole day, we're walking in the snow, it's slippery. Which means that was the first time to me I experienced that thing. Never ever. That's my best thing. I never do it in my life. So, which means I enjoyed it. It's our best.
In 25 years, James, that was the first time when we found an animal that Renias come up to and hugged me. that was the first and only time.
Yeah.
That will indicate the level of excitement and happiness and joy at discovering that puma in the riverbed beneath us. We were so pleasing. I think that was also, we were pretty happy it was over with.
I must say, your description of that tracking expedition in Patagonia is going to do nothing for tourism in Patagonia. I certainly have lost the desire to go there after reading it. Next one coming from, this is a really nice one from Graham Charles Murray, who says, Alex, the tracker market, do the lodges around Africa value the tracking expertise sufficiently in your opinion? And are the trackers moving out of the academy being employed easily into lodges?
So I'll answer the second part of the question first. Yes, they are being employed easily. As I said earlier, over 90% of our graduates that have ever been trained are in permanent jobs. And with it, they normally get jobs within 2 to 6 months of graduating from us. I think there will be a saturation point, but to answer the first part of the question, no, there are some lodges who do understand the value of tracking. It's usually the older lodges that have been around and who really heavily relied on trackers' expertise to put an experience together to find animals in large wilderness areas at that time, where there was no technology, no network of roads, no radios, few guides on the ground. Those lodges understand the value. A lot of the newer lodges don't have the benefit of that history, and so they need to be educated. And everywhere we've gone, where we've deployed professional trackers, 2 lodges who did not use them before, or used trackers but didn't put them through rigorous training, have all reported improved sightings, improved guest experiences. So I hope that will be the outcome of the Tracker Academy's work.
All right, let's move on to one from Madeleine, who says she understands many trackers started as young boys in the villages. Are there many female trackers coming into the industry?
Yeah, we started in a tracker in Northern Cape and Kalahari. So we just trying. We already put, I'm sure, 4. Alex, I'm sure it's 4.
Yeah.
And so no many challenge of the women. So, it doesn't seem like they're showing much. Maybe they're still nervous, but I don't know. But they're still by sure they're coming. So I'm sure they'll improve. They can see actually what a video for that. But before that, the women promised the skate to come forward with it. Some say it doesn't like to see animal. They're scared of animal. They're scared on foot on the ground, tracking the lions or leopard on foot. So, but anyway, but now they're coming slowly by surely. I'm sure they'll be building up. I'm sure they're coming.
Yeah, we didn't offer for women trackers to come to Tracker Academy because our setup was initially not such that we had the facilities to have separated men and women. But we now do that, and so we've got our 5th and 6th lady tracker students with us. And I think now that we've opened to women, we'll start to see more and more women apply. But there's no doubt that the tracking is not reserved for men only. It's totally gender neutral.
Great, that's good to hear. I imagine if you'd said the opposite, it would have driven your sales through the floor. Now, let's do... Here's one that I like this one from Sue Schippers in Plet. She wants to know, Skippers, what does the title of the book refer to? Changing a Leopard's Spots.
Yeah, Sue Skippers. Hello, Sue. Sue was my standard 2 teacher, Plettenberg Bay Primary School. Very nice to have you, Sue. Changing a leopard's spots refers to the fact that anyone can change. The idea that we are stuck in a certain narrative is not true. When I went to Londolozi in 1995, that lodge had been running for 25 years or so. There weren't any qualified white trackers there. I became the first qualified white tracker. There were no people, there were few that could speak Shangaan properly. And I started to speak Shangaan. Renias was the first person from Dixie to travel the world tracking like in the way he has done. He has influenced people with grace about African culture and traditional tracking skills all around the world. And I just think we have categorizations in our mind about who people are and what they represent. And the book goes to provides you with a comfortable, well, that's them over there. And those are Indian people, or Chinese people, white people, black, whatever it is. And there's a categorization associated with that group. And you never get beyond, you're skimming along the surface. So the book goes to forming relationships with individuals. It's only when you get to that individual level do you learn about another culture and another people. And it's an active thing. It's not something you can do if you like, when you like. You have to make a conscious decision to say, I want to become a South African who understands South Africans. And the majority of South Africans live like Renias in Dixie. And how many middle and upper class South Africans really know that? I generally don't know the answer to that. I didn't know that when first time I went to Dixie, and I talk about that in the book, my first experience, which was just was a profound experience. I was taken in by a family who eventually adopted me as a brother, and I've gone through ceremonies with them now, the Mhlongo family in Dixie. And so the changing the leopard spots, that's a very interesting question, and it refers to getting down actively, consciously, forming relationships and being prepared to step out of your comfort zone and create proximity with somebody that you don't know anything about, and perhaps you may fear.
All right, great. I'm just filtering through a couple more of these. Here's a nice one from Trisha. Do you think that there's a positive place for technology in the future of tracking that can assist with preserving the value of this ancient art, i.e. through storytelling, making tracking more accessible, etc.?
Yes, there is. There's no doubt there is. Tracking will fall behind if it doesn't adopt the technology trends of today. So the answer, just a short answer would be yes. Creating repositories of knowledge is one thing. Digital repositories of knowledge, where this knowledge is not lost. Right now, you've got lots of books out there, but if we could create digital repositories of information about how trackers go about their work, their knowledge, their stories, their methodology, their decision-making approaches, how they go about interpreting signs, we need that centralized in a digital repository. That's one that comes to mind. We are working on a project now, which is pretty cutting edge, and we'll announce it in the next few months. It'll be a surprise, but we're working on a very ambitious technology project to take tracking to the public and to engage people so that when they're in nature, they're in a full 3D environment, that they can make use not of only looking at birds and trees and plants, but we can open up for them the world of tracking, and there are tracks everywhere you go. You can have a fantastic experience on your gravel driveway in any place in the world if you know what you're looking for, and we want to give that access to the world, and we're working on that.
I struggle to believe that you and I could have had a great tracking experience on our driveway in Craigle Park, but I'll leave that to your better judgment. About 1,000 people have asked one or more of the following questions, so I'll let Renias answer it. Can you perhaps describe a very dangerous situation or one of the most scary situations that you were both in?
Yeah, the scary situation for myself and like we're in is, I remember clearly was taking the leopard with she had 2 cups, and she had it. It would take, I'm sure, it took about an hour, and they had the cups actually. I remember that it was a winter time, so the bush actually not thick, but there's a way elephant to push a tree over. It's a list of grass growing underneath. And she had the cups there. So I said, okay, go back, fetch your vehicle, bring a car closer. Because I think we should be close by. So anyway, so Alex went off, fetch a car. So Alex come from other side. I'm right other side. So we leave that leopard right in the middle, in between myself and Alex. And then that leopard, she jumped out in the bush and she started growling, she do little things. And so I said, buddy, I have a ruffle. Actually, Alex said, no, I have no ruffle. So I have a ruffle with me. So I said, okay, stand still there, don't move. And she do a lot of jumping up and down there. I said, stand still. And I can see Alex a little bit afraid about it. I said, no, just come down, stand there. And she do a lot of things. And eventually she just went off. So I remember clearly that I moved Alex. If I take Alex, myself, I'm a little bit shaking of that. That is the bad situation experience. Actually, we just count myself and Alex.
It sounds absolutely terrifying.
We were tracking black rhino in Malawi. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, please.
Okay. We were tracking black rhino in Malawi. And the trackers, we find that rhino. You got to get your. It's not if they charge, they will charge. It will charge. So we were almost tracking from tree to tree, making a mental note of where the big trees were. Eventually, we find this rhino, and true to what they said, it bursts out of the bush and comes straight at us. And the Malawian trackers, they were up a tree within moments. Renias and I were behind there, but I was in front of Renias, so I got up the tree reasonably quickly. And Ren got halfway up the tree, and the tree branch broke. He was carrying a heavy backpack, and basically this rhino had the experience of Renias coming from the heavens like this and landing within a meter of this rhino. And I just don't think the rhino's used to being in charge and used to things running away and hiding. This was a person coming from somewhere else up above. And fortunately, it got such a shock, it turned and it ran. And I'm not sure who was more afraid, Ren or the rhino, but it made for some great humor. But it was, I have not sensed an animal so keen to get us as that black rhino that day. It would have barreled right into us if we had not got up the tree or partially got up the tree.
Onto a different tack now. Have you got any advice? This is quite a nice question from Kerry, who says, do you have any advice for those trying to learn a third or African language? Might be your second language, Kerry, not necessarily your third.
Yes, I have one piece of advice, and that is to just speak it. To not feel self-conscious that you are speaking it badly or with an accent or people are going to tease you. I notice most people they won't even attempt it because they're afraid of some social fallout or being teased and so on. That's in my view why a lot of people don't learn that second or third language. So you've got to get out of your mind. You're going to sound odd and you're going to stumble around a lot in the beginning, but it's totally worth it in the long run.
All right, and I think probably we'll start to wrap things up now, but I'm going to give you one from Josh Alex, who says, is there a key insight from tracking that businesses or leadership teams seem to connect with strongly? So you guys obviously do your talk, motivationalspeaker.co.za, if I'm not mistaken, if you want to book Alex for a talk, and Renias for a talk. Is there a key insight from your talks that businesses or leadership teams seem to connect with strongly? And that's from Josh.
Yes, so we've, the art of tracking is a very powerful metaphor. Every human is born to track. We are tracking the weather, stock markets, our family members. We are tracking subtle behavior traits in people all the time. We are literally born to track. And so that extends into business. And master trackers and expert trackers and very people who have spent a lot of time tracking, they adopt a mindset, a mentality, a tracker mentality, which I think can be very helpful to people in their personal lives and in line with Josh's question, the business. So the greatest trackers are able to balance detail with creative ability. They're able to move between the minutiae of what an animal is doing, the detailed evidence that it leaves behind, and zoom out with what's going on in the broader landscape. How is the landscape, the environment, having an influence on how this animal is moving? And that zooming in or zooming out is what makes them so good. Most of us in business get assigned to a job which requires one or the other of those. And seldom do people get asked to exercise the interplay between the technical and practical and the creative, intuitive, innovative. And so that's the sort of yin and yang, if you like. And you can learn to do that. There are practical skills that you can learn to improve your ability to operate at that nexus. And so that's where we believe tracking can help business leaders. Also, in terms of their decision-making process, trackers have a very interesting way in which they go about making decisions. Potentially due to the nature of the transaction, there's very little emotion, social or political factors that come into play. It's purely about what is this animal doing, and where do I think it's going, and what is my knowledge of that animal? Do I understand? Have I seen this behavior before? Have I seen this evidence before? Can I make connections, ecological connections? And only trackers with the greatest ecological literacy can make those connections. And in the same way, business leaders need to make connections in their environment all the time. They need to make decisions based on these connections. And so that's where I think we can help business leaders. It's totally unique. And so it is training. That it has never been done before, linking the art of tracking to business. We've created a simulation, a tracking simulation, where we filmed Renias and I tracking lion, rhino, and leopard in the Greater Kruger National Park. And when you track a big animal, there are these important decisions to be made constantly. I'll take an example. You get to a point and the tracks head off in an easterly direction, and you've got a bird alarm calling in a westerly direction. What do you do now? You could follow those tracks. That's a reliable information where the animal has gone, or you know that bird could be alarming at that leopard you're following, and that if you follow the bird alarm call, you could find that lion quicker. So there's a decision, and we stop the interactive documentary at that moment, and people split into teams, and they've got to discuss and make decisions. And it's fascinating work. We've been researching this now for 2 years. My partners and I with Ren, we're working on deepening that experience and improving the links to business and asking business leaders where do they need help, and seeing and establishing whether or not tracking can plug the gaps.
Great, thank you. I'm going to give you one last question, if you could answer it relatively briefly. And this is from the great Graham Vakale. Who of the two of you is better at detail and broad picture?
Ren's better at broad picture, I'm better at detail.
All right, there we go. I would have said the same, knowing the two of you. And then very last one, the book doesn't seem to be, it's not available in the UK or the US yet. Is there any way for anyone in the US or the UK to get the ebook?
Yes, if you go onto Kobo, the Kobo link, you can get it there. And we will be launching it in Europe and America and Australia in the next couple of months.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you very much to Renias and Alex, two remarkable South Africans who have had an adventure second to none will continue to have an adventure second to none. And I hope all of you will go and read this remarkable book by two very remarkable people. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Samsekile.
Samsekile.